Hey everyone, my name is Leon Vandenoord from The Bazaar, and today I'm going to be showing you how to work with 2D layers inside 3D space in Adobe After Effects. So this is what we'll be creating. Sorry about that noise. Foreground, middle ground, background, just showing you how 3D space works and how to put objects in it. This is a lot of times this is used for images, not necessarily text. It can be used for text. I'm using it for text just to show you how it works. But obviously you can implement your own images in here. Say you have a nice beautiful landscape and you want to pan down to it, pan through it or something, show some depth, some fake depth, I guess. That'll be really nice. All right, so let's get started. I'm just gonna delete everything so we can start from 0. All right, let's create a new composition. The composition settings don't really matter for this, so I'm just gonna call it 2D layers, 3D space. The rest of the settings don't matter since it's just me showing you how to work in 3D space. All right, so now that we have that, we're gonna go up to new. We're gonna right click, new text. And we're gonna make the first text foreground. All right, and as you can see, we have the anchor point right here, and that's why the text is going this way, to the right of it. So we're gonna wanna move the anchor point to the middle so that we can get it to be even. So you can either hit Y on your keyboard and drag it over. Holding shift will allow it to snap to different things, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe that's a lie. No, holding shift snaps it to the edges. But anyway, you can drag it on there, or you can use just an anchor point plugin. Pretty simple. All right, so now we're gonna go down here to title action safe to see this, so we can center align it. We're gonna zoom in and just line this anchor point up with the middle of the composition. All right, that seems about right. Then we're gonna go back here, turn it off again. We're gonna make sure to keep this on so you can see the things that you select, otherwise they'll disappear and you'll be like, oh, where's it going? All right, so now what we're going to do is duplicate this layer. So Command D, duplicate it twice. We're going to want to move these layers below the foreground layer because these are going to be middle ground and background. So we are going to be hitting Command back bracket for the 3, and then we're going to go back up. Sorry, I hit the arrow key. Go back up the 2 and hit Command back bracket once. So it's 1, 2, 3. We're going to make sure to turn these 2 layers off because we're going to be naming the middle layer middle ground. And since we don't want to select any of the other text things on accident, we're just going to turn them off. Select them, middle ground. Now, as you can see, the length of middle ground is different than the length of foreground, like the actual length of the word. Therefore, the anchor point has just been duplicated from the foreground positioning. But since middle ground has a different length, it's going to have a different point. So we're going to recenter the anchor point. So either hit Y and drag it over, or use whatever methods you have. Go back to title action safe. We can zoom in with the scroll wheel, and we're going to center align it as much as possible. That looks good. We're going to go back here, turn it back off. Then we're going to do the same thing with the background layer. So we're going to, why is it not turning on? There it goes. Back, we can just type in back. So this is almost as centered as the other, but still not. So we're going to want to center the anchor point. Go back here, zoom in, see where we're at. All right, zoom out. Go back here. Sorry, I'm clicking around too much. Now, what we're going to do is make sure to make all these layers 3D. Now, how to make these layers 3D is you go over here to the 3 checkboxes, and the last checkbox with the little cube is 3D. So you can just click and drag over all the layers to make them all 3D. And what this does is, if you think about a graph, you're usually working with the X and Y axis. But now that you've made it 3D, you're also adding a Z axis, which is 3D space. So that's basically how we're going to be using this. So in order to put these in 3D space, we're going to have to change the Z depth, obviously. The way you do that is you have to go to the positioning property. So if you select them all and you hit P on your keyboard, you'll open up the position tab. So this third number in this row of numbers will be your Z depth. This number will only be visible after you've clicked the cube icon right here. So make sure not to forget your 3D space icon. We're going to separate these layers by 1,000, I guess, pixels, for lack of a better word. I'm not sure exactly what unit of measure this is, but I'm just going to say pixels. So you can see, and that's a very big jump, but I'm just going to show you how the 3D space is activated, and just so I can use more 3D space, rather than if I was like 10 pixels apart, you could barely see the 3D effect, or however you'd call it. So for the foreground, we're making this one -1,000, and for the background, you can make this 1,000. So now you can see that we're in 3D space. Now, in order to move around this and see it in action, let's go and close these panels. You can also select them, hit P, and hit P again to close them. But what we're going to do now is go to New, right-click New, Camera, I'm going to use 15 millimeter. It's wider, but standard is 35. Doesn't really matter for this project considering I'm showing you how to use 3D space. But now what we have is a camera that is activated in our composition. So if you hit the C key, let me fit this screen. If you hit the C key on your keyboard, you'll go to the camera tool. And now if you pan that around, you can see there's actual 3D space and the objects inside of them. And now what we're going to do is animate them. So to make the camera effect look a little better, or, you know, this is all a question of if you want to or not, but I'm going to show you how to add a depth of field to it. So when you go to camera options, you want to go to depth of field, just click it. You don't have to drag. You can drag, I guess, but just click it and hit it on. Then we're going to go to the aperture, and this is the amount of blur that you're going to see on the objects that are not in focus. So, you know, to make it pretty drastic so I can show you how the 3D works, I'm going to bring it up to 400 pixels, but you'll just have to decide how many based on your images you're using or your text or whatever's in your project. The only other thing we're going to be changing in these settings will be the focal distance, but that's only after we've animated our thing so we can, you know, see. Yeah, I'll explain that later. So let's collapse that panel. Let's go back to these. We're going to hit P. So as you can see, they're in 3D space. Now, since we have those activated, to use our camera, we're only using this camera layer for settings, not for the actual animation. For the actual animation, we're going to right-click New, Null Object. It's going to create a null object, and this is just basically a layer with nothing on it. If you were to create a new layer in Photoshop and you've not done anything to it, this would be that. So make sure to tick the 3D icon on as well for this. And then you're going to want to take the camera layer and go to the right of it, to the pick whip tool, the little whip, and you're going to want to drag it over to the null layer. By doing this, you're parenting the camera to the null layer. So whatever elements you change on the null layer will automatically affect the camera layer. Right. So now we're going to want to change the position. So go to the null, hit P, go to the Z depth, and as you can see, now we're moving through space. So pretty self-explanatory. Ooh, dragged it out there. But so if you're going to be using this, a lot of times it's pretty slow moving through space. So if you hold shift, it jumps it. So it's pretty fast. So I'm just trying to show you slow, fast, you know, so you can get to where you want quicker. All right. So you don't say we want to start like this. We want the text in the foreground to be closer to the camera like this, but you're like, oh, it's blurred out. How do I change that? Right. So what we're going to do now is go back into the camera settings and we're going to work with the focal distance. But to see where our camera is in position in relation to the text so we can get the right focal distance, we're going to want to see the camera in the actual 3D scene along with the items. To do that, we're going to want to go to the top view of the camera. So if you go to this panel right here and go to top, you can see all the layers in action. So this is your camera. These are your 3 layers in space, and this is your focal distance, this line that's making this triangle shape. So to change this line, all you have to do is drag your focal distance. And obviously, same thing applies to this as it did to the zoom. If you go like this, it's a little bit slow. If you hold shift while doing it, it goes much faster. So if you have a lot of layers and you need to travel through a lot of Z space, it's nice to go, you know, fast instead of a slow pace. So we're going to line it up as best as possible. It's fine to me. We're going to go back to the panel again and go to active camera to see what the camera is seeing. We're going to zoom back in. I'm just going to go over here to fit so we can see the full screen. Now we're done with the camera. We don't need to touch this anymore. If you want to make sure not to do anything to it, just hit lock and it won't do anything. Now, you're going to select your null layer and we're going to hit P. And then we've already gone back in Z space to 725. And this will be our starting keyframe. And this is, you know, this is where we want to start off. So from here, we're going to go to the back, and then we're going to come back at the end of the layer. We're going to come back to this position, so it's a seamless loop. So we're going to make the next keyframe, let's say 30 frames over. So if you check over here in the left part of this panel, you'll see this 00010. This is your frame count. This is your time count. So that's the difference. So we're going to go up to 30. Right here, as you can see, we're going to place the keyframe, and then we're going to you don't use the camera tool for this since you're not actually using the camera layer. Using the camera tool like this will not actually do anything. You will have to change the properties in the null layer. So now we're going to move forward. This is taking a bit, so I'm going to hold shift so it kind of drags me quicker. We're going to move this in focus as best as possible. Again, we can go back to top and we can zoom out a little, and yeah, you see that's pretty close. So we're just gonna move it till right there. All right, so now we're gonna go back to active camera, and as you see, background, which is our second keyframe, is now fully in focus. Now, we don't want to change anything else right now. We just simply want it to go back. So to do that, I'm just gonna go grab this keyframe, which is this positioning, and I'm gonna copy it and go another 30 frames ahead. So I'm at 30 now, and at 60, I'm gonna paste that keyframe. So I'm going over to 60, right here, 60, and then I'm gonna Command V, keyframe. Now, if you decide this is the end of my composition and this is the only space and time I'm going to be using, if you hit N on your keyboard, it will close the temporary work area if you decided, and then if you right click it and trim comp to work area, you'll trim your actual composition to only the frames that you're using. All right, so now as you can see, we have the animation. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and I hope it was helpful. If you're running into any problems or have any questions or concerns, please leave a comment down below, or feel free to email me at info@thebazaar.com, and I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. All right, thank you for watching. Bye.